is exciting. I get to talk to you for 40 minutes about my startup that failed, so that's pretty fun. I really am excited. Hopefully I can shed some light on the experience that I gained, give you some confidence in your plans for entrepreneurship, your plans for your idea, your startup, whatever you have, milling around in the back of your mind of what you want to do. Hopefully some of the things that I went through, some of the pitfalls, you can see early on and avoid them. And also just get a good sense of that there's life after the death of your startup. So I'll try to touch on that as well and where I'm currently at. But as Sarah mentioned, I am or was the founder and CEO of Vici. Vici was an event merchandise platform that allowed fans to skip the line, not worry about the hassle of carrying merchandise with them at a concert, sporting event, entertainment event, and be able to get that merchandise and really have something to remember that moment in their life. We had a lot of great experiences, and kind of where it all started was Coachella 2012. A few bands that I never thought ever would get back together at the drive-in and refused played Coachella, and it was the first time they'd played in like 15 years. And so I told myself, there was this at the drive-in shirt that I really wanted, that every day when I went into the festival, I saw it, I wanted to get it, but I didn't want to carry it around with me. Every day when I was leaving the festival, there were also 20,000 other people leaving, and the lines were atrocious, and I just missed out on that opportunity because I convinced myself that I would get it when I got home, and still to this day, 3 years later, I don't have that shirt, so it's pretty sad. So I started to kind of bounce this idea around with friends, talked through it. At the time, I was working at another startup called App Raptors, helping develop apps. I don't develop, but I would help design and do brand strategy, help people take their ideas from a napkin sketch to a concept to getting the right things to get it developed. And so I started to run this idea past friends and saw that at other concerts, either it was that they didn't want to wait in line, or they sold out of the item that they wanted. And so really started to look in to see if this had some legs. At the time, our office was in the startup building in downtown Provo, where Boom Startup was holding their recruiting pitches, where you could come and meet the Boom Startup team, you could pitch your idea, talk with mentors. And I ended up talking to John. I was actually in John Richard's entrepreneurship class at BYU a few years back. So I knew John, I knew a little bit of what he was all about. And so I talked with him, and he said, do a little more validation and give me a call. So I called him about a week later. I talked to him. I told him exactly what the idea was. He's like, hang on, hangs up the phone, calls Donnie Osmond, who is his next door neighbor, and calls me back, and he's like, Donnie loves it. Come to Boom Startup, pitch on, a few days later, and we'll see what we can do. So it was this kind of crazy scramble of an idea that really accelerated. Once we got that call, we did validation, we threw together this pitch, and we did everything we could. We went through the Boom Startup process, and we actually didn't get in. There were 10 companies. We were the 11th. But John, being the great man that he is, called up some people, got an additional investor, and we were brought on as the sixth and final company for Boom Startup South. So it was kind of this crazy experience of actually getting into Boom Startup. And through Boom Startup, it was an experience where this idea, it wasn't like we got into Boom Startup and the mentors and everyone were like, yeah, this is great. It was more like we got into Boom Startup and we just started getting the hammer dropped on us. John was always our advocate. We had a few other mentors that really loved to rip me apart. I remember there was a time when I was up in Salt Lake and I get a call from John, and he says, get down to the startup building in an hour. there's some mentors and some investors that don't think that you have a business model, which I guess now looking back they were kind of right. So I drove down to Provo, met with John and can't remember Craig Earnshaw, and for an hour and a half I stood in front of a whiteboard and defended my idea, just getting objection after objection of why this wouldn't work. And I think in that moment I really realized that I could defend myself. I could defend the fact that we would figure it out, that we would be able to validate and continue to validate and learn from this experience. So through Boom Startup, gained an exceptional amount of experience. Really were able to connect with people and to build relationships with some pretty exponential, influential people, and some really great relationships that I still have to this day that I can call on for advice or mentorship, for help through ideas or different areas that I'm working on. Let's see if there's anything else. Demo day with Boom Startup was pretty crazy. There was a day about a week before demo day. So if you don't know, Boom Startup's an accelerator. I'm sure most of you know. And at the end, there's a demo day where you pitch to hundreds of investors and people and really try to sell what you've achieved over the 3 months in the summer. And about a week before demo day, I was pitching to about 10 people. And the night before, I had stayed up. I slept at the startup building. I was preparing my presentation, slept about an hour because our presentations were due that morning so that they could get them ready for demo day the next week. So I woke up to people coming into the startup building, got ready, and then went and pitched to John and about 10 other advisors. And about halfway through my pitch, they cut me off and they said, what is wrong with you? You can't string a sentence together. We don't understand what you're saying. If you're like this on demo day, you're not pitching. So that was a very terrifying moment. I went home, got some rest, and came back and really put in the time and the effort and learned from that experience that you really do have to put it all on the line. But at the same time, the people that were in that room weren't tearing me apart or weren't trying to bring me down. They were trying to build me up, and they taught me some lessons on, the proper preparation and really executing on our pitch and being able to be succinct in our messaging. And I think for me that was a great growing experience to realize that these mentors, these advisors were all there to help me out and to make sure that I looked good and that I was ready to present in front of investors and be ready to do what it took. So the Boom Startup experience really was incredible. If any of you are thinking about doing an accelerator, I highly, highly recommend it. There's nothing like the knowledge you will gain and the experience and just pushing yourself beyond the limits that you thought you had, and your ability to work around the clock, your ability to, when you have demo day on the line and you're getting pushed from 20 directions on preparation. Sorry, I don't know how to, my computer's muted, but like the audio is coming through, so I keep getting Slack messages. What was I saying? When you have that deadline and everyone's pushing, everyone's behind you, my founding team was incredible, and we all were working towards this common goal. We were able to pull off some pretty incredible things. Sorry. So that was my experience with Boom. I definitely recommend looking into an accelerator because you will learn things. I felt like I was drinking from a fire hose for the entire 3 months. John, if you were here, could attest. I started Boom with not a clue as to what I was doing. I thought I knew. I thought I was a great entrepreneur. I thought I was, worthy of being a startup CEO, and that I had, all these great ideas, and I realized that an idea is a load of crap. An idea really only is so valuable. The real value is the execution on that idea and what you're willing to put in to accomplish your goals, what you're willing to sacrifice, or the growth that you're willing to achieve is the most important lesson I learned from Boom Startup. The second great experience was we got not Donnie, but Don, who is the son of Donnie. It's a little confusing. But Don Osmond, a great guy, he came on as our lead advisor through Boom Startup. He was able to get us on the Donnie and Marie Christmas tour, which was actually a really awesome experience. The Osmonds are pros. They've been in the industry for 50 years. And this was one of the greatest and most terrifying moments of my life, where we were waiting for Apple to approve the app as it was going into the App Store. The tour started December 3rd, and on December 2nd, we threw together, as this process was happening, we knew the app was not going to get accepted. It didn't get accepted till the 7th, but we were simultaneously building a web version of the app, and somehow midnight before the first show, we had the app up and running and everything pulled together. So it was another crazy deadline that really forged the relationship with my co-founding team. Late nights, it was during Thanksgiving, I think was the week before, so we were all in separate places, working from computers, coordinating on making sure that we were ready for the tour. And we learned a lot. We gained a lot of experience from doing the Osmond Tour. And I think the biggest thing is that we really could have focused more on our MVP. We decided to build out this iOS app and thought that we needed all of these things, when really a simple MVP, a simple web app version of the software would have sufficed, and we could have really dialed things in earlier on. And so I think our vision through Boom Startup, we wanted to have this app, we want to have all these things, and they kept saying, just get an MVP, get some traction, get things together. And I think our lack of experience, it was incredible to see. So my co-founding CTO, Mikey Murphy, went from being in the CS program at BYU and knowing how to code a few websites to putting together this web app built in Angular and all these new technologies, and now he's doing some really incredible things and is able to do what we did in about a year at Beachy with our back end and our front end in 2 weeks, I think. So he's really accelerated his skills as a developer. So the Donnie Marie Tour really helped us see where the bugs were, see where the holes were in our value proposition, but it also helped us realize how insane the entertainment industry is and how difficult it is. Just even with having Don on our side and Donnie knowing about the product, there's still 10 people that we had to go through to get access to their tour. And so looking back now, realizing that attacking that area of the market probably wasn't the best, because music is just there's so much red tape, there's so much legal, there's so many hands in the pot in the music industry. And we kept telling all the advisors during Boom, we're not just entrepreneurs that love music, that want to create this cool music tech product. Because anybody that loves music has probably thought of a cool idea. And so we really wanted to push that. No, we understand, we see these things, but looking back, focusing on a different area that has the same problem probably would have been best. So I suggest, with your ideas, of really being able to see a broader scope of where your idea can fit throughout multiple industries, and really looking at what is the lowest hanging fruit and what is the easiest to validate your model, and then going to where you want to be. And some of the pivots that we went through over the year after Donnie and Marie, so that was December, January 2013, 2014. After that, we started to talk with racing events, marathons, movie theaters. We started to spread out who we were talking to and realized that this was a pain not just in the music industry but across the board. So that's definitely a suggestion to really canvas out. I mean, we all have used the business model canvas, and it can be confusing, but I think it really is valuable to see where can your idea fit across multiple areas. Talk to people about your idea. Talk to people that could be in your same industry, and really see if there's any other applications that maybe you haven't thought of. I know I made that mistake multiple times of thinking that I knew better, or this is my idea, I've thought through it all, but the more people I talked to, the more the idea evolved and grew and expanded. It wasn't something, I think a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we think, my idea is great. Don't bother me. Don't try to steal my idea, because I'm going to do it, and I don't want you to steal my idea. But really, like I said earlier, the execution of the idea is where the value is, and where like the actual validation is. And so sharing your idea will only improve that idea, unless it's, something that you're trying to patent. There's some things there, but anyways, so we pivoted. We started to focus on different areas. We went to South by Southwest in 2014, and this was probably something that, looking back on now, wasn't a necessity. We wanted to have a booth there. We had a booth in this startup showcase, so we got it cheaper, and they allowed us to have a booth and set up and talk to people. We actually ended up running into some incredible people. We met a company that is a point of sale for live events. So they do everything that we didn't do. They did like back end, they did the number counting of how much merchandise comes in, how much goes out, which is a huge pain in the industry, where it's basically a bucket of cash and a bucket of t-shirts or merchandise, and there's no real accounting behind it. So we met with them. We talked about doing some partnerships, and I think South by Southwest really helped me to see that there's value in. So we initially thought that what was the company? I can't think of the company right now, but this company that does the tracking of merchandise, we thought they would be a competitor. We thought that it would be bad to talk to them, and we ended up, by chance, the CEO walked by our booth and heard music and merchandise tech and walked over and talked to us and gave me his card. I knew who he was because we had seen their company, we looked them up on LinkedIn and all these things, and he then handed me his card and was like, let's chat. And I think that was really an awesome thing for me to see, that someone that you may think is your competitor that may actually be a huge ally and an asset to your company. And so it's definitely worth reaching out, even if it's someone you think. We had another company called Sidestep. You can look them up. They have an app. They have 10 to 20, the exact same concept as Vici, a few different things. They were able to execute on the idea. They're in New York. Their investor owns a merchandise company, so they do the merchandising for the bands. They create it, they print it, they distribute it, they go on tour with them. So they've been able to partner up there. And their CEO called me on the phone one day when he saw what we were doing, got my information through LinkedIn, called me, and we were talking CEO to CEO on exactly like the exact same product, the exact same company, and we're able to have this great conversation about our visions of revolutionizing merchandise in the entertainment space, and really being about the fans and being able to enhance the overall experience of the fan. And so it was really interesting to see that you can have a conversation with someone that may be a competitor. Obviously, you don't want to maybe share all your ideas, but there's value in knowing your competition, in engaging with your competition if the opportunity is right, and really seeing if there's something you can do to work on to improve the industry as a whole. Then we did the BYU's New Venture Challenge, which was great. We got another chunk of money to survive. We got mentors, advisors, and this time around, we really took advantage of our mentors. We really were able to sit down and talk through things. Right after Boom Startup, actually, we put together an advisory board. If you are working on an idea, if you're working on a startup currently, or even if it's just barely an idea, one of my greatest recommendations to you is start forming an advisory board. Start it now. Don't wait until you have funding or you have all of these things. Don't wait until your idea is vetted out, because an advisory board is really there to help you. John Richards really actually helped. He talked at Boom Startup. He did a whole lesson on an advisory board, what it takes to set up, and we were one of, I think, the only of the 10 companies that went through Boom that actually set up an advisory board, and it was an incredible thing. It was rough as a CEO every month to stand up in front of 5 or 6 advisors and tell them my 3 biggest concerns and issues we were facing, and for the next 90 minutes get just, again, ripped to shreds and poked holes in all my ideas and poked holes in everything that we were doing, and just really feel like crap. Like I had no idea what I was doing, and that why am I even attempting to do this? But really at the end of those 90 minutes, we got such valuable insight from these advisors from various backgrounds, from various areas that ended up being invaluable. Every time the next 30 days after our advisory board meeting, we made so much more progress than trying to fiddle around, trying to make it on our own, trying to not admit to ourselves the issues that we were facing. And as soon as we set up the advisory board and started having those monthly meetings, it was incredible the progress and the growth that we had as a company. So I definitely would suggest talking to John. He can give you details. He could probably share his presentation with you. If he hasn't, maybe he's already given it in this class. But there's huge value in having an advisory board. And I've talked to countless other entrepreneurs and people who have set them up also before they really had large investment or before they had a lot of growth in their startup. The advisory board, in their minds, is what made the difference to get them to where they needed to be. Also, feel free, if you have any questions while I'm talking, feel free to raise your hand if there's anything that you want to discuss. Yeah?
When you talk about the advisory board, do you just literally just go with people that you respect and you ask to be on that advisory board?
It's pretty incredible what food will do. What we did is we held 2 exploratory meetings. I called John, I called a ton of the mentors that were in Boom Startup. But yeah, I mean, we put together an email and did some phone calls where we said, hey, we're holding an exploratory advisory board meeting. And spell it out for them. Like, we're going to have 2 of these meetings. You're going to invite like 20 to 30 people to these initial 2, and then you'll whittle it down to 5 or 6. So get the people, your professors or people that have been of great help to you. They don't even have to. The other thing is they don't have to be local. You can bring them in on a Google Hangout. Don lives in Pasadena or in LA area, and he would just hang out, Skype in, and would join the conversation that way. So my advice on that is to have 2 exploratory meetings, because you want to fill out how vocal they're going to be, how much of help they're actually going to be in that environment, because really the value is they're going to give you direct feedback, and they're going to maybe make phone calls during the meeting. They're going to plug you into the right people. If it's, we really wish we had this contact or this person, or we need a lawyer in this, or we need whatever it is in that meeting. Once you're set up with your board, they should be able to make those phone calls and do those things. And even in those exploratory meetings, you'll be able to see who's voicing, who's talking, who's actually making things happen, even in those exploratory meetings. Hold them exactly the same way. Have 3 major issues you're facing, and just talk through it and take notes, and maybe hand out a paper where you can get notes from individuals as well, because maybe in a big group someone won't speak up, but you can see that they're of value and they would give insight maybe in a smaller group. So yeah, I mean, food is a powerful thing, and you can get these individuals that you would, it really was humbling for me to have an advisory board of the people that I did, and to be able to call on John Richards and Sid Kromenhoek from Peak Ventures we talked about, Mike Dodson, just incredible entrepreneurs, incredible business people. They would come and meet with me once a month for an hour and a half to 2 hours. So don't hesitate in calling people and inviting them. And then we also gave a portion of equity. So there's a great article on what is it, Venture Hacks? Yeah, Venture Hacks. That talks about, so there's like so Don was a super advisor because he was making calls, he was setting up meetings for us with people in the industry, and then all the way down to, you know, a regular advisor, and it breaks down kind of what percentage of equity from like 0.2% up to like 2.5 is kind of the range. And really for a little bit of equity, a lot of successful people, if you haven't realized already, are really really great at giving advice and really willing to help out, because they had people that helped them get to where they are today. So a lot of them really do want to give back. Great question, thanks. Was there another hand over here? No. So the second time around through Miller Intervention, we really took advantage of our mentors. We had some great mentors up in American Fork. I can't remember their names right now, but they have a company that does education for large corporations. What's their company? I can't remember off the top of my head, but great guys. They again would let us come to their office. We'd meet with them for an hour and a half, and really dial in our idea, and they would make connections and introductions for us. So that was pretty incredible. Then we ran out of money, and this is an area that I really struggled with, and I mean, I'm still winding down the company and getting all the legal things in order and finalizing things, but running out of money is no fun. I definitely made some mistakes in, you know, paying for things too early, or not respecting, or really in my mind like projecting out, oh, we're going to raise this money, we're going to do these things, and I think lost focus on the value of sales and traction and getting revenue coming in, so that we could take that and get investment, rather than like focusing on just getting money or getting that perfect connection or that perfect relationship that's going to get us to that level, that's going to get us to that investor or that person that's going to take us to that next level. And I had a very difficult time admitting to myself that running out of money was part of it, but really it was the writing on the wall of, you know what, being an entertainment company based in Provo, Utah, just is very hard. Especially in the entertainment industry, it's such a relationship-based industry. You know, you go grab drinks after an event, or you got to mingle. It's like LA is a bubble, but once you're in that bubble, from people that I've talked to, like everyone is willing to help you out, and you're able to network and you're able to connect with those people. And so that's another thing. Actually, going along with that, when we submitted to the MBC, one of our judges works at Bain. His name's Jameson Haslam. Great guy. Really helped us out a lot. And where was I going with that? So he set us up with a friend who has a startup that does online banking platform. Like if you have a large bank, they probably have an app, and they have, you can take a picture of your check and all of that. Well, he was doing that for credit unions and smaller community banks that don't have the money to build it out themselves, and they had white labeled software. And so I talked to him because we kept talking to Jameson about moving to Las Vegas or LA or New York or Austin to be, in a hub of entertainment and to be able to connect with these people, because we just, over the phone, they just weren't. They're like, Provo, Utah, where is that? How much music is happening? Well, there is a lot of good music in Provo, but it didn't carry the weight that we needed. And so I talked to the CEO of this company, and he was in Palo Alto starting their company. In my mind, that's like prime. That's where all the startups come out of. It's Palo Alto. You can make connections all over the place. And the insight that he gave me was extremely valuable. He had convinced himself and his team for, I think, the first year of their company, like, we're in Palo Alto, we're around other startups. But their business was in downtown San Francisco, where all the banks work in the financial district. And so he convinced himself that driving down there and networking and taking them out to lunch was good enough, because they were in the startup hub and they could, work with other startups. And he kept feeling like, we need to be downtown. We need to be in the financial district. So talked to the entire team, and they made the decision to move from Palo Alto to downtown San Francisco to be right in the heart of the financial district. He said that it was night and day the difference that they experienced once they were down there. Once they were just mingling in the same coffee shops, once they were running into these bankers at lunch, at these after-hours events, and just mingling and being there and being a part of that scene, gave them the clout that they needed when they did call these bankers. Like, oh yeah, I keep seeing you around. You know what? Let's chat. Come on in. Well, I want to hear what you're working on. I keep seeing you around. Eventually, I'm going to talk to you, so you might as well come in. And that for me was really valuable. That yes, you can start a company anywhere. That yes, you can be successful wherever. You can put in what it takes, but at the same time, location can be very valuable, depending on what you're doing, depending on the company that you're founding. If it's a general software application that can reach the masses, then it's probably not necessary to be in a hub or in the right place. And not that there isn't great things happening with the startup ecosystem here in Utah Valley and in Salt Lake. That's not it. I think depending on what you're doing, being around your customers, being able to network with them, connect with them, feel their pain, take them out to lunch, talk to them, engage with them, that's where you'll be able to really hear and feel what their pain is, and be able to pivot a lot faster and maneuver your company at a much faster speed, so that this right here doesn't happen to you. This is also a very hard thing for me to admit. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, outside of Boom Startup, did you guys raise
No.
money?
So we bootstrapped the entire time, really. I mean, we had Boom Startup funding, and then New Venture Challenge, I think, was also like 10 grand as well. So we had about $30,000 between the two, and then we had a few other like smaller like awards or different pitch competitions that we did, but that was it. I mean, we really bootstrapped. We really did what we could to make this happen, and I think there was a lot of value in that. We learned a lot. We learned how to make things happen without, a lot of money. We went to some so South by Southwest has a Vegas conference, and we just learned that we could hack the system, that we could network with people, that we could connect with people, we could go to these events and do it on a dime and sleep in crusty, terrible motels in Vegas, and really do what it took to network and connect with the right people. And so, at the same time, bootstrapping is not a lot of fun, and it's really hard. And there is value in not holding out too long. If raising money and raising it from the right person, I think, is also extremely important to emphasize. That you don't just go out looking for anybody who can throw money at you. Look for the right type of investor that fits well with you, that you can really engage with, and that can bring more to the table than just money, I think, is crucial. So yeah, it took me some time. I think it's still like in the back of my mind. I don't want to admit to myself that Beachy is no longer, and there's like these moments of like bursts of people, still wanting to know about it or still asking me, and it was hard. And it just in my mind of being able to go to John and say, I don't think we're going to make it. That was extremely hard. To go to my advisory board, to go to friends and family, and admit. The hardest was admitting to myself that it was time to wrap things up and move on. I was terrified that would be it. I was terrified that all that experience I gained was just going to be tossed aside, and I was worthless to any organization or myself, or just that experience that I had let more than myself down. But I'm here today for this reason, in that there is life after the death of your startup, that there is so much experience that you will gain. I can't emphasize enough, and I'll go through my takeaways, and I'm probably jumping forward and backwards in a lot of these things that I'll cover in a minute, but I can't emphasize enough that you will gain more knowledge by just doing it than by thinking or planning or preparing. So I know, like at 40, 45, 40, we can end and we can do a question.
Oh yeah, send us some questions.
Cool. So I'll go through these. I've kind of touched on some of them. I'm going to get out my handy dandy note card here. Just want to make sure that I touch on everything, and I'll kind of cruise through these real quick. Cool. So this one is huge. Be teachable. This is more than being humble, but humility plays a part. There's nothing more annoying than an entrepreneur that thinks he knows everything. Investors will see right through it. Advisors will see right through it. Co-founders and people that you bring onto your team will see right through it. Reality is, you don't. I don't care how smart you are. You don't know everything. Being teachable is really being willing to. You don't have to accept all the advice that comes to you, but you need to hear it. You need to be able to digest it and allow people to give you insight, to give you perspective, to give you, their insights on the experience that they've had. One of our advisors, Mike Dodson, he, in the 5 or 6 companies that he's been a part of, I think it's like 800 million collectively in exits. He came back from LA, moved to Draper, and started going to networking events where he would talk to entrepreneurs and say, look, I just ended a company. I don't want anything. I'm not asking for anything, but I'm here. If you would like my advice, I'd love to talk to you about your idea, how it can help in any way. Just let me know. He had 0 people reach out to him for help. 0. They all kind of had this mentality of, my idea is great. I'm going to work on my idea. And he contrasted it to his experience in LA and San Francisco, where the value of the idea in those hubs is so much less. The value of my idea. In San Francisco, people are much more willing to say, you know what, I'm going to put my idea on hold. You've got some legs here. Let me jump on and add value where I can. And let's build this up together. And then maybe later we'll come back to my idea. So there's much less emphasis on my idea, don't talk to me. It's much more of a collaboration and a collective mentality of how can we help each other succeed and how can we help each other grow. And I'm going to put my idea on hold so that we can make this thing happen because there's some great things going on here. And that was really some great perspective that Mike gave me, is that when people like Mike, like John, like any investor or advisor that offers help, take it. And be willing to listen to what they have to say. And again, that does not mean that you need to do what they say at all. That just means Be willing to learn, be willing to grow, be willing to accept that you don't know everything, and be willing to completely change your mindset if necessary as you learn new things and your perspective increases. The next is know your limits. I think this one's a hard thing for me. I very much hate saying no. As you can see, I'm here giving this presentation. Knowing your limits, I think, is really admitting to yourself that you will burn out. And I think I got burned out with Vici. I kept putting myself in, putting 60, 80-hour weeks in and just trying to make things happen. And I think you need to know your limits, and you have to have a good balance, because if not, you'll burn out and you won't be able to move on. I think hard work is absolutely necessary in starting a company, that you've got to be willing to put in those weeks. You've got to be willing to make those sacrifices, but you also need to know your limits. You need to know what's going to burn you out, what's going to be too much, and steer clear of that, because as soon as you burn out, it's very difficult to come back from it. It's very difficult to, especially within the idea, if things get hard and you're burnt out and you just can't push on, it's going to be very hard to motivate yourself to get back on board. So definitely a huge recommendation there. Next is build a great team. I can't emphasize this enough, that my co-founders, Garrett and Mikey, we're still like best friends to this day. And we actually had a few others who were founders in the beginning that left for other opportunities, and I'm still great friends with them. Garrett and Mikey have become two of my best friends, and we went through so much together. You need to really be willing to trust that you can sacrifice, that you can work together, and you can understand that the person to your right, the person to your left has your back, and that you're working towards this common goal. And also, don't be too hard on your team. Don't expect that they know everything. Have the same understanding that you would hope from them to have for you, that you don't know everything, and be willing to accept those flaws. The next is know your why. I don't know if any of you have seen Simon Sinek's TED Talk. He has a book called Start With Why, and this is really powerful for me. And your why is your company why. At Vici, we believed that embedded in our DNA is the yearning for experience and belonging. And we funneled every decision that we made into that why, into that purpose of why we started this company, because we wanted people to have better experience and a greater sense of belonging. And I think the same goes for internally. The team, as we recruited people on board, we were able to share with each other why we were entrepreneurs. Understand why you're in this class. Understand why you want to be an entrepreneur. What is your goal? What is your dream? What is your vision of who you want to become and why you want to do that? Because I think once you figure that out, every decision you make, putting your life on the line for a startup, will make sense, because it agrees with your purpose and why you do what you do. The next is connect with everyone. I've touched on that, of networking, talking with people, asking people for advice, giving of yourself. I think, so the first time I went to a networking conference was South by Southwest V2V, right before demo day at Boom Startup. Mikey and I went down to Vegas. We had no idea what we were doing. We had never been to South by Southwest. We'd never been to a conference, and we just went. And we started talking with people and networking with people. And what I realized at that event was networking is not what can you do for me. Networking is what can I do for you. I just talked to this guy who needs a product that you just explained to me. Let's go find him and let me connect you with them. Because as you start to look externally on how all these people that you're meeting and networking with at these events and connecting people with, there was a guy that had an app that would regulate water supply in like Africa, and then there was this other guy who was like the sprinkler startup, that they were looking for technology on how to like regulate their sprinkler systems. And I was able to connect those two people and realize that the value of networking is how can I help others, because then it comes back tenfold. That relationship, that bond that you build with those individuals will come back and they will start connecting you with the right people. So it's more of a look externally on how to help others. We'll get to questions. And finally, this is the biggest one. Don't wait. When I joined App Raptors, the company before Vici, I was talking to a friend who he was running this app development company and told me some ideas, and I thought I had great ideas, so I went to his office and talked to him, and he's like, "Hey, you should come work with me. Let's make this happen." The very next day, I grabbed my desktop, I brought it into the office, and just started working. With Vici, it was talking to a few people, talking to John, getting that a little bit amount of validation, and just jumping in head first and making it happen. Waiting around will do you no good. Waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect opportunity, there's never going to be the perfect time. And the knowledge you will gain, I can promise you, will be much more than you gain sitting in this class, listening from me, or anybody else that comes to talk to you, or any class that you are taking. Because all of that is great and it is applicable, and knowledge is power, and you can learn great things in your class. But the application of that knowledge is when you really learn a lot about yourself. I think that's a huge thing. You will learn more about your weaknesses and who you are as a person as you get out there and start a company, because you will realize how you're not as great as you think you are, but you can push yourself and you can grow. And with this, like, now that I've gained all that experience, and while I was working on Vici, I didn't realize all this knowledge that I was gaining was going to be applicable later. I now have a great job at a startup where I'm making great money. I have a great team around me, huge opportunities because of all the things that I learned from doing my startup. Yes, it failed. Yes, I didn't make it. I didn't make the dream a reality, but I am a better person today for that experience. I have greater knowledge and ability to execute on ideas, to help people with their ideas, and just a lot of great opportunity because of my experience with Vici, with all of the hard times, the great times that I went through. So I can't express this enough, that if you have an idea, if you are hesitant to go all in, do it, because you'll come out on the other end, succeed or fail, with greater knowledge and greater experience that you can't get really anywhere else. Thank you.